Welcome to Blind Straddle Productions' broadcast of the final table from the main event at Foxwoods Poker Classic, March 29th, 2016. These Foxwoods Poker Classic events are always huge, and with nearly $1.6 million in guaranteed money, it's no surprise this one was the biggest yet. You see, this event started off with a huge event, $500,000 guarantee for just $600. All these structures are on the right side, and they're fantastic. The $600 event started with $20,000 in chips. Day 2 and 3 were 60-minute levels. We go through all the mixed game events, lots of guarantees, $1.6 million, a remarkable number. And all this, more than 2 weeks worth of tournaments that lead up to the main event, another $500,000 guarantee with a $2,700 buy-in, $30,000 in starting chips, and 60-minute levels all the way through. It took us 3 days to get through the 182 players in this event. We have nearly $10 million in winnings among the 10 players that made our final table here, fighting over $120,000 first place. Let's take a look at seat 1, Andrew Dean, the largest in winnings at the table. Nearly $3.5 million in total winnings, over $3 million online. He's a professional poker player, plays online for most of his money. Took a big chip lead into day 2. Andrew had 2.2 million of the 5.5 million chips in play when we got to the final table, so he was a big favorite to win this thing or run deep in it, and he's known for his aggressive and fearless play online. Andrew is going to be a force to be reckoned with at this final table. In seat 2, we had Tony Roberto, another professional poker player, over 1.8 million in winnings. He's a Foxwoods regular, a WPT champion, and he's from Boston, Massachusetts. He's also fearless, and we're going to see some clashes between him and some of the other big stacks. Seat 3 was Brad Zeki. We think he might be a professional poker player, but we're not sure. He was very coy on filling out his form, didn't seem to want anybody to know much about him, which usually indicates professional poker player. Probably a professional cash game player. He has $207,000 in winnings in tournaments. He's from Baltimore. And just 2 weeks before this event, he took 4th place in a Poker Night in America event, another large tournament. In seat 4, we have Tom Debris Levesque, another professional poker player, over $1.4 million in winnings. He cashed 3 times in the WSOP last year, won 2 Bellagio Cup events in the same year. I'm not sure anyone's ever done that before. And he's a regular in the New York poker scene, very well known there. In seat 5, we have Michael Nye, another professional poker player, starting to be a theme here. $480,000 in career winnings, and this is his 50th career cash at Foxwoods. I don't know anybody who's got that many cashes at one venue. He loves to golf, and he plays quite a bit online as Mass Mike. In seat 6, we have David Stefanski, another professional poker player with $1.2 million in winnings, 9 WSOP cashes. He's a highly respected East Coast regular and very strong short-handed. And this was the player that a lot of players at Foxwoods thought was most likely to win this event when we got to the final table if it wasn't going to be Andrew Dean and his big stack. David Stefanski is very well respected among his peers on the East Coast. Seat 7 was Brad St. Vincent, also a professional poker player, over $600,000 in winnings, and he won a preliminary event in this very series, so he already has a Foxwoods Poker Classic title from this series from about a week before. He also won the PPC Aruba event in February here in Foxwoods at the Mega Stacks series, so won himself a trip to Aruba with the Poker Players Championship. And he's second place all-time in money winnings in Rhode Island, second in his state. Not very many people can say that. Seat 8 was Brandon Schambach, a professional poker player. He doesn't play a lot of live tournaments until recently. This is his second career live cash. He usually plays cash games and plays some online. He once won a tournament on PokerStars with almost 9,300 players. That's more than the main event at the World Series of Poker a lot of years, and he won it. And he's from Middleburg, Virginia. Our 9 seat is Jamie Kaplan, another professional poker player. He's over $380,000 in winnings, 8 World Series of Poker cashes. He's from Las Vegas, and he has a lot of interests outside of poker. When we talk to Jamie, he loves history, World War I, the Mongol Empire. There's all kinds of painting and reading. He loves to do other things. It's nice to hear somebody doesn't spend all of their time in a casino. In seat 10, finally, we found a player who's not a poker pro. He's a consultant. Has $115,000 in career earnings, but he's not a slouch. He might not be a poker pro, but this guy can play. He's a student of Bernard Lee, and Bernard actually popped into our broadcast, talked in the chat window on our Twitch broadcast about his student, Andy Kaplan. He was very proud of him, and Andy was talking to Bernard between breaks as well. Andy loves the competition of the game and owns his own business. All right, let's get started with this final table. Our 10-seat Jamie Kaplan was busted in 10th place. So Andy Kaplan moved over to take his place. That was an error in the payouts. You'll see the scrolling payouts list in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Initially, that was put in as Andy Kaplan, but it was Jamie Kaplan who busted in 10th place. The official final table starts at 9, and that is where we begin here. Big pot was won by Andrew Dean in the first hand. Pretty standard. He's been winning big pots this entire tournament. That's why he's got a huge chip lead. We pick up the action here in a fairly good-sized pot between Tony Roberto and Brad St. Vincent. Roberto wins a pretty big pot here to get started. You see the scrolling payouts on the left, and we update those as we go. You see our Twitter handle at Blind Straddle there, the current blind level, the next payout, and all the event info. Foxwoods Poker Classic main event, the buy-in was $2,700. There were 182 entrants, and the prize pool was $485,000. We see Roberto put out a good-sized bet, and St. Vincent calls. This pot sets up another big pot that they played immediately after. It gave Roberto a lot of chips, and that probably had a lot to do with the way that the next pot played out. Let's skip ahead and see Roberto win this pot. After we skip a few minutes of deliberation on the turn and river, we see takes the dealer a couple of swipes to get that pot over to Tony Roberto. That's a pretty good one. And it leaves Brad St. Vincent pretty short, Tony Roberto with a pretty big stack, and it also leaves Roberto with some confidence leading up to this next hand. Here we have Roberto opening for a raise, and Brad St. Vincent doesn't believe him, and he's a little short stacked. He's got a hand he likes, he puts all his chips in the middle. Roberto calls, and we see the hands flipped over, Queen Jack versus Ace 7 of clubs. Roberto had the Queen of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds here. I'm sure a bigger stack from St. Vincent, Roberto has to call, but he's nearly crippled him in the hand before, and this is the chance to bust him. So St. Vincent in for his tournament life here, and the flop does not look great for St. Vincent. Now we can see the cards. Flop cam comes in. St. Vincent really needs a jack here. That doesn't help him any. And the jack doesn't come through, and Bradley St. Vincent is our 9th place finisher. He wins $12,610, and I'm sure so we had a lot of fans of Tony Roberto in our broadcast talking in the Twitch chat. I'm sure there were a lot of people happy when they saw him stacking yet another big pot. Wins 2 of the first 3 pots, and they're both big, and busts our first official final table bust out Brad St. Vincent for $12,610. Probably not what he was looking for when he got to the final table, but not a bad payout for 3 days' work. About 15 minutes later, after some boring hands of raise and take the blinds, we had a couple big hands pop up. Start with a raise from Andy Kaplan and a re-raise all in from Tom Debris Levesque, who thought his jacks would be good here, but it turns out he ran into Andy Kaplan's aces. Tom needs some help. But as we'll see here, not much help comes. He had to hit a jack. He didn't hit a jack, and he was out. So our 8th place finisher, Tom Debris Levesque, will take home $15,762. Again, not what he was hoping for when he made the final table, and certainly not the biggest score for a guy like Tom with the kind of winnings that he has, but not a bad couple days' work. And Andy Kaplan stacking up a bunch of chips there, starting to go a little bit of a stack. And a few hands later, we see Andrew Dean raises it up. Michael Nye makes the call from the big blind. We get a 10-7-5 board with 2 diamonds. Both players look interested in this board, and as we're going to see, they were very interested. Dean makes a bet after Nye checks. They get it all in. Looks like we had a third player in the hand who folded, Tony Roberto. Nye thinks, checks his stack. Decides this is the right hand to go with. And immediately Dean calls the all-in with bottom 2 pair. So Dean had 7-5 of clubs and flopped 7s and 5s. Nye has the 2 overcards and the king-jack of diamonds for the flush draw. Tough to fold that hand when you're a little short-stacked. But he doesn't get any help with his draw, and Dean makes a full house. The rich get richer, and Michael Nye goes home as our 7th place finisher for $19,400. And Dean's stack at this point was huge, $2.6 million at this point. Nearly half the chips in play with 6 players left. And 6-handed went a long time, probably the longest 6-handed battle I've seen. We were 6-handed for nearly 2 hours of this tournament. There were some hands played. Dean lost a little bit of his chip lead. Stefanski chipped up a little bit, but we'll skip forward to a little later in the 6-handed play. Congratulations to Michael Nye, our 7th place finisher.
All right, cool. We're streaming live. So I'm here with Dave Stefanski, who's still at the final table, and we just wanted to check in. The camera's right there. So I just wanted to kind of check in with you and see how things have been going. You're doing awesome, of course. Like, how have you been feeling?
I came into the day pretty sure. I got really lucky against Mikey. My ace jack, we just ace king pre-flop for his last 19 big blinds. And from there, I went up. I just had a little bit of a rough level, but still 25 big blinds, and I'll try to spit it up here.
Yeah, for sure. When you got it all in against Mikey in that ace king versus ace jack hand, were you guys pretty even stacked? I know you had him covered by a little bit, but I mean, the hand, would you say, kind of played itself really because it was like fun?
It was a tough spot because actually Brad opened the cutoff and Mikey GM 19 blinds on the button.
Okay.
But I thought that he could be jamming kind of wide there, and I had about 33 blinds, I think. So if I lost, I would have had 14 blinds still. But
yeah, that's one of those spots too where, like, now getting to know you guys as players and being around the room a little bit, like, you guys know each other's games pretty well. So I get what you're saying, but it's a little bit of a tough spot. And he could definitely, knowing Mikey like I do now, he can be opening with kind of a wide range.
Worse when he's shoving the button.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks so much for taking just a few minutes to chat with us, and best of luck.
No problem.
All right, thanks. All right, everyone. Hopefully you were able to all check in and hear that interview with David Stefanski. We are actually heading back now. The players have about 33 seconds left on break, and I just want to, I'm going to be posting the chip counts as well, but just to kind of give you a live update of what they're coming back to as far as deck sizes are concerned. Andrew in the 1 seat has the commanding chip lead with, actually, no, that's not. Yes, he does have the commanding chip lead, sorry, with 3,447,000. Next to him is Tony, and he has 800,000 even. Bradley is to Tony's left. He has 833,000. David has 385,000. That's the person we just spoke to. Brandon has 461,000, and Andy in the last seat has 548. So right now, I think it's fair to say this is really kind of the Andrew Dean show, given that he has all the chips. But as you all know, anything can happen in this crazy game of poker, so let's stay tuned and watch how this all plays out. We are officially on a 15-minute break now. So I'm going to start out by letting you all view chip counts. And actually, we have a special guest joining us, so if you want to come on in. All right, everyone, this is Tim Riley. I'm going to start by saying how I know Tim. Actually, I knew him way before he knew me. This summer was the first time that I worked for the World Series, and I covered him in the main event, and you and your wife. Yeah, they were the last couple standing, so that was a really exciting thing. So it was really fun to get to kind of sweat them, and that's kind of where I first learned them. And then obviously through covering events here at Foxwoods, I've been able to get to know you and your wife a little bit better. I just wanted to start off by talking about, you played in this event. Yes. And unfortunately that did not end so well. Would you mind telling us that story? I'm sorry in advance.
It was a tough one to take. It was one of the tougher bust outs I've had in a while. It was like 24 left fish, 21 getting paid with $6,700 min cash, which is pretty good min cash for a $2,700 tournament. And I've just been played solid for a couple days straight. Didn't really take any spots. Had one chance that I got in and got that one hand. This is the second time I had an opportunity to get all my chips in, and I was dealt aces, and there was a spot where It looked like to be a great spot to 3-bet before I even looked at my hand, where I had Kurt Colberg opening and Mike Nye calling. The guy was very active opening, and the guy was very active calling. Two guys who could have very speculative hands in the spot. Before I even looked at my hand, I was like, this could be a good spot for a 3-bet squeeze. I was on the button. Probably wouldn't have taken it, seeing the fact that we were 4 off the money, and I didn't really want to do too much damage to my stack at that point. But I looked down and I saw aces, and I'm like, wow, this is like amazing. So I made a 3-bet to just under 30,000, and Dean, who's over here now, Chipley at the final table, wakes up in the blinds with kings. And he puts in a 4-bet, and to me at this time, I'm just loving my life, thinking to myself, how many chips can we get in the pot right now?
Sure. And
finally, he give me a chance to make a run at one of these Foxwoods tournaments, and we get it all in the middle, and he's got the kings, I got the aces, and we made it all the way to the river before the king showed his ugly face on the river.
I know. I remember the flop came with 2 queens, and I was like, oh, this is good, this is great.
Felt good.
River was like nothing because of the 3 of diamonds or something, and then just
more,
king of spades on
96%
the river.
we have top 3 stack, and yeah, it was tough. I mean, Foxwoods, this is like my home casino, I guess you would say.
Sure.
I'm from the area. I just don't do well here. I probably played 30% of my tournaments, live tournaments that I've played live, have been here.
Sure.
And it doesn't even amass for maybe 5% of my total live cashes.
Yeah.
I don't run well here.
I mean, in fairness, I did look you up on Hen and Mob, obviously, and I know of you as being a really prominent player in the room, and I saw that you do have about 821,000 in live earnings, and I did notice that there is
Not
no
much
whole
here.
lot of Foxwoods.
I've read 100K at Foxwoods. I have like one score for Dave Stefanski, who's at the final table now. I took second against him in a $1,200 main event they had here, where him and I played grueling 3.5 hour.
Oh wow,
heads up.
Oh my gosh,
One
crazy.
of the tense battles I've ever had. He's a really good player, and just neither of us wanted to give up. And we're friends too, so it was a lot of fun. And that's the best score I've had at Foxwoods. Other than that, a few, 8 or 9, maybe 1,000, 10,000 score here or there.
Yeah.
But considering the amount of tournaments I've played here, I'm definitely a losing player at Foxwoods.
The good news is it's got to turn around at some point, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I really feel like it's almost that time.
Yeah.
So you did say that you are friends with Dave at the final table. Do you want to talk a little bit about the remaining players? I also have a list here of their chips counts. I don't know. Do you want me to go through those first?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so basically we have Andrew Dean. He is still the chip leader with 2.6 million. Tony Roberto is next to him with 950,000. He has really been slowly chipping up. It's been kind of fun to watch that. And then Bradley, I don't know how to say his last name. Is Zeki?
Yeah.
I'm probably butchering it. I'm so sorry, but he has 475,000. Dave Stefanski has 550,000, and Brandon Schombeck has 255,000. And we're going to be going back to, let's see here, 12,024. Yep, and with a 4K ante. So yeah, if you want to just kind of weigh in on like any of these players and your experience with them, and
well, yeah, sure. I guess Andrew, he's an online player. We have a bunch of mutual friends. I didn't know him before this trip, but I know that a lot of his friends, and he comes very highly regarded online, and plays well online. He's kind of new to the live scene here. Tony Roberto, who's in second chips. I played with him a bunch. He plays a lot of the bigger events, WSOP events. He knocked me out of 5K 6 max last year with a chip lead pot when, again, I got it with aces. And it's the only thing I play is aces.
yeah, clearly, obviously.
And he had 9s, but he got there and went on to do well in that tournament. He's, I guess, a bigger, he plays some cash games down in Florida. His game's a little unorthodox. He's not going to be somebody who's, he's going to be playing, good, solid MTT finishing. He's more like in it to win it type of guy. Not really looking for ladders, doing some stuff, playing against Andrew. In my opinion, I think that he shouldn't be doing. He's getting into wars with the chip leader, which is just not something you want to do when you have 3 guys who are could be busting out at any moment. It's better off for him to kind of maintain, let him do his thing, let knock some people out, get 3-handed, and then open it up.
Sure.
So I don't think he's playing to what he to his best ability right now. I think he's maybe thinking he's a little bit better than the field. Maybe he doesn't know who these other guys are because he might not know Dave Stefanski, who's the 4th in chips here, is probably the most underrated poker player I know.
Oh my God,
without a doubt.
Amazing.
He's very good.
Yeah.
He's very happy staying here on the East Coast. He's a family man. He's got a baby, a wife, great kid. He's content here. You're not going to see him chasing, dreams in Monte Carlo trying to buy him $50,000 to turn into the next Mustafa Kenneth. He's a very unbelievable player, and he's just consistently runs deep in every single event he plays. So he's going to be tough. If I were to pick right now, I would say it's going to be Stefanski and Dean heads up for the win here.
Yep.
That's obviously anything can happen if Roberto continues to try to battle with Dean and gets the best of it, which he could. He has position on him, but I don't think it's the best strategy for him at the time. So the other guy here, Brad.
Bradley Zeki,
Is he the one in the free seat?
He is, yep.
See, I didn't know who he was either yesterday, but I asked him in the middle, when we were playing, I asked him for his name, and he was a little reluctant to give it to me because I could tell of the hour I sat with him. I said to this kid, he's good. I could tell his sizings were on point, his three betting, his defending, his big blind, everything he was doing seemed to be up to date with the standard trends of poker stars online, top players.
Sure.
So I knew that he definitely had a feel for the game, and I didn't know who he was, but I expected definitely to see more of him in the future. That he was on my radar for sure. I'd be interested to see what happens with him, but just out of who I know, I think Stefanski and Dean are your favorites here.
And it was nearly 2 hours into 6-max play, half an hour after Molly's dinner break interview, that we had our first big hand in 6-handed play. Brandon Schambach has been really tight all day. Probably didn't have any hands, didn't have a lot of spots, a lot of aggression to him. He had been very careful. He ships from the small blind here over a raise from Tony Roberto. And Roberto had won a significant pot from him earlier in the day, but really the only major pot that Schambach has played is this one here. So a raise from Roberto, Schambach goes all in, and Roberto is thinking, and he asks Schambach if he has aces. We could hear this on the live broadcast when we had table sounds. It was obvious. You'll see Schambach shake his head no, and immediately Roberto calls. He gets the count, knows exactly how many chips it is. Schambach even made a comment, and you saw his thumb there making a gesture as if it's a coin flip. There's Roberto insta-calling after Schambach said he did not have aces, and he wasn't lying, he didn't have aces. We'll see the cards in the flop cam here in a second. And he had ace-queen, and Roberto calls with jack-10. Schambach was pretty short to call with jack-10, probably isn't hard to do there. And it works out very nicely when Roberto flops 2-pair and turns a full house. So the top pair doesn't do any good for Brandon Schambach, and he is out in 6th place. 6th place, though, not a bad payday, $24,008. He heads off to get paid $24,000 for 3 days' work. Not bad, and the money's starting to get pretty serious. It was nearly another half an hour before we got to our next big hand. You can see we're almost at the end of the 12,000, 24,000 level, which was the level after dinner break. 5 players left. We have Andy Kaplan and Tony Roberto getting into a hand. Roberto shipping all in from the cutoff seat, and Kaplan calling. We'll see the hands here in a moment. Roberto with the king-9, Kaplan with the ace-queen. And Roberto got lucky against ace-queen with his jack-10 in our last hand to bust Brandon Schambach, but does it happen again? Doesn't look like it. With the queen on the turn, Kaplan takes the lead, busts Roberto, who is our 5th place finisher. And for 5th place, Roberto gets $30,312. And Kaplan gets a nice stack. He's building up chips slowly at this final table. Our combatants fought for nearly an hour, 4-handed. You can see that we're close to the end of the 15,000, 30,000 level. 4 minutes left. So we played through most of that level without a bust out. Here we end up in a big pot between Andrew Dean and Michael Nye. Nye was a little short stacked. He raised all in from the cutoff seat. And you see here, Dean looks down and thinks for a moment, but then makes the call. Dean, of course, with that big stack, could call a little wider. We'll see the hands in the flop cam here in a moment. But we see Zeki had a pair of 4s. Dean had a pair of 9s. No help on the flop for Zeki. No help on the turn. And the river ends it. So Brad Zeki wins $40,013 for 4th place. $40,000 payday for Brad Zeki. And Dean gets richer. And of course, you can't win them all. Dean probably felt like he could win them all after the way his 2 days had gone. But the very next hand, after busting Brad Zeki, Dean ran into David Stefanski, raised his big blind and got called. Faced a bet on the flop on a 10-10-7 board and called it. Checked the turn, and Stefanski again bets. Dean gets a count, makes the call yet again, and the river brings a fairly safe deuce. Nothing has changed. Unless Dean was on a draw, he would have to call again, I would imagine. And he does. See Stefanski firing the 3rd bullet. Could be 8-9. And I'm sure that's part of what's in Dean's head here. If Stefanski has 8-9, could be bluffing, could be overcards, could be anything. But Dean has some thinking to do. And we are on dinner break. Kaplan ready to go to dinner, but decided to watch the rest of this hand play out. And after a long deliberation, Dean does make the call. Stefanski shows him a 10. 10-9 for trip 10s on the flop. Dean loses a good sized pot here. Pre-flop raise at 3 streets of value, and look at that mad face. Not a happy Andrew Dean to lose that big pot going to dinner break. We'll be back from dinner with a report from Molly.
Hey Chris, I just wanted to check in and respond to the question about if he is watching the Twitch stream. And Kaplan, I did have an interview with him over the break, and sorry that y'all missed that. That was a little bit backwards from that part. But he did tell me during that break that he actually learned poker from Bernard Lee, and basically Bernard is watching the Twitch, and so I know that they've kind of been texting back and forth, and then he also has been checking in on our Twitch stream as well. So he is in fact watching.
Thanks, Molly. And back from dinner break, about half an hour into the next level, the 20,000, 40,000 level. You can see the trophies on the table now in about the 3 or 4 seat. Beautiful crystal trophy that they give away for the main event champion here. One of these 3 players is going to be winning that trophy sometime in the next few hours. You also notice the names above the players' heads now. That's a new feature we're trying out. This whole broadcast was really more of a beta test than a produced broadcast for us. And when we got down to 3-handed, we decided to test that player names feature, and it actually works great. People seem to really like it in the chat on the broadcast. So now you know exactly who is playing. That's something that we'd like to be able to do when we get to 6-handed or so in all of our future broadcasts, so that it's very obvious who's playing. It'll take a little bit of work, but we should get it working. And it works well for the rest of this broadcast. And now we move ahead to deep into the 25,000-50,000 level. Andrew Dean had been our chip leader all of day 2 and much of day 3 here. But after losing that big pot on dinner break and losing a few other pots three-handed, he was getting short-stacked. So when Andy Kaplan raised from the small blind, he re-raised all in, hoping to have some fold equity from the big blind with 4-6 of clubs. He had the right stack for it, but he was facing the wrong hand and a bad run out. Couldn't catch a pair. And Andrew Dean, chip leader wire to wire until we got to three-handed, busts in third place. Dean is going to get $49,955, just shy of 50 grand. That's good money there. And the remaining two players will be playing for $122,000 or $79,000. But it doesn't actually work out that way. We'll show you why in a minute. Talk to us, Molly.
Molly checking in. I did want to just confirm the top deal that they came to. Essentially what they're doing is they're locking up $90K for second, and then they're playing for the rest, which I'll have the exact number in a few minutes, but it's around 111. So second place is going to get $90K. First place is going to get the rest, around 111,000, and then the trophy as well. So good luck to both the remaining players as we play this out.
And after 45 more minutes of grueling play, the players agreed to a chop. Here's Molly to tell us about it.
Hi everyone, this is Minnesota Molly checking in from the final table. As you can see, in the middle of that level, both players have just walked away, which essentially means they've come to yet another deal. Originally, they had agreed that second place was going to take $90K and first place was going to take $111. Andy's exact quote, "Listen man, you're a great guy. You're a better player than I am. I'd be happy to just chop this up with you right now." And David instantly said, "Yeah, let's do it." And then offered for Andy to take the trophy, as Andy does have the chip lead right now by a bit. Yeah, so they've agreed to evenly chop the money, and Andy's going to take the trophy. So there you have it.
And here's Molly's interview with Andy Kaplan.
Awesome. Yeah,
Congratulations.
Great few days. So really happy.
I know. And you had so many supporters. I was watching the chat the whole time. I tried to listen to you guys, take pictures, write things. It was kind of craziness, but it was just so fun to see all the support that you had when Lee was on there, just seeing things.
Yeah, awesome. Well, without him, I wouldn't be here.
That is so
I wouldn't.
cool.
He helped me so much, and I want to thank him. And I want to say hi to my kid, Matt and Sophie.
Yes, Matt and Sophie, for sure. That's awesome. I always love when people give shout outs to their family members. So that's great.
Yeah.
So basically, you guys came to a heads up chop deal where second was going to take 90 and the first was going to take 111,000. And then towards the end, you decided that you were going to just chop it up evenly. What kind of led to that? You were the one that sort of instigated that. What do you think?
Yeah, it was just David is an amazing player. It was a hobby for me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So he plays all the time, and his skill level is very high. So I was like, you know what? He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And the money, it doesn't matter to me.
Sure.
And he said, let's do it. Once I get ahead in chips, and I could have been like, no, now we're gonna play.
Right.
But I'm like, he's a great guy. They're a great family. I'm like, so what?
Yeah, for sure.
So what am I gonna do? So what does it matter?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, for the record, these two they're both great guys. Okay, so you can be humble all you want, but I'll sing your praise. Great guys, and you played an awesome game. Seriously, both of you, and especially when it got heads up. Fox and I were talking on the commentaries. Fox specifically was basically saying that could have gone honestly another probably 3 or 4 hours between you two. The way that it was going to play out. So probably for your sleep habits, it might have been a good decision.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be nice. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I changed up my style a lot when we got three-handed. Everyone saw me as tight.
Absolutely.
And I just started getting a little more aggressive.
Sure.
And it definitely paid off.
I think so too. And it was interesting because after you guys came back from the dinner break, I went on the stream and I said, I don't know what happened on dinner, but basically he's like a different player.
Yeah.
He just kicked it into high gear, and it was and it was really the perfect timing because all along they had kind of seen you as a tighter player. You were playing a little bit slower, and then all of a sudden it was like you came back from dinner and you had a bunch of energy drinks or something. I don't know.
No, nothing like that. Bernie and I talked.
Oh really?
They just set my mind. I said I have to switch. I have to change my style because they're going to run me over.
Yeah, well,
You know, and it was like I came back with like 775, and then all of a sudden I had 2 million. And it was like, but I, you know, so I just I had to change it.
Sure.
You know?
Oh, it was so fun to watch you guys. I mean, it was a blast.
It was a great fun too. Yeah,
it really was, and you made a lot of fun. And the banter every now and then I would check and I'd be like, "Turn up the mics, you gotta hear." Like, you guys are like,
you don't want to hear all
and
that,
laughing, and like, I'm like, this is definitely the most fun I've ever had working at Final Table, and I've done a ton of these. So
yeah, you don't want to hear everything I said. No,
probably not, but some of it was pretty good.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add? Or
no, just really happy because I've been playing a long time, and it's nice to get a good win.
Well, you really deserve this. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You did an awesome job.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We had an awesome day. Congrats to Andy Kaplan for taking down the trophy, and it's been a wonderful time. So we will see you next time here at the final table.
Thank you.